decision week for Mikel Arteta, the board, and Arsenal in general. To have a decision week literally 2 weeks before the transfer window even happens is things that you never really hear. But that's the situation we find ourselves in because of the players that we are linked to. We've got to make a decision this week. And also on top of that, because there's international tournaments coming up, it's going to be very difficult for these two to make a decision. So it's mainly between Sesko and Osimhen. We'll also talk about Smith Rowe bits on this video later on. And let's start with the main one first. So Sesko, the Euro starts next week on Friday. Usually in the first 2-3 weeks of the transfer window, because the transfer window actually opens on the same day as the Euro starting. Usually that's when you start hearing this team wants this one, this team wants this one. You know, they're going to take a couple of weeks to do negotiations, and then maybe at the end of that month and at the beginning of July, that's when you're going to get deals done. But for us, it's a bit different, especially with us being linked to Sesko. This is a player who currently has a release clause that is expiring at the end of June, and his team is currently playing at the Euros. Will be playing at the Euros from next week, so it will have his minds on something else. You cannot really expect to go there and take him out of the Slovenian camp and ask him to, you know, come and do a medical. You've now signed you, blah, blah, blah. And the player himself, I am very sure if it gets to like a Friday or Saturday, the player himself will say, okay, now, you know what? If it isn't sorted, I'm going to focus on Slovenia first. And then after that, I am going to look at whether I'm going to stay or leave. But the problem is he currently has a release clause. So in terms of reports from Plettigol, Arsenal want to secure the signing of RB Leipzig forward Benjamin Sesko before his 65 million release clause runs out at the end of June. So I would assume Slovenia don't progress past the group stage, but if they do, then it just becomes even more impossible to get the deal done. So I don't know the exact dates where they're playing their games, but that's around 55 million. So if you want to get the Sesko deal done, you're going to have to do it this week, pretty much. You're going to have to complete it this week, because the moment he gets to next week and he starts focusing on the Euros, it's going to be even more difficult. Now, if he wasn't at the Euros, things would have been different. You'd have had the whole of June to get this deal done, to convince the player to 100% join, because there's a couple of other teams that have entered, like Chelsea and Man United, that one team. I wouldn't be surprised if I hear Bayern one team or Tottenham one team. All of those teams usually come in for players like this, especially for 55 million signing. It's not easy these days. The market has changed. Back then, 55 million was so expensive for everyone. Like paying 55 million was unheard of. But these days, to get a striker for 55 million, that is a bargain, because as you can see, the strikers we are linked to, Isaac, they want close to 200 million. If you want someone like a Watkins right now, they'll say 100 million. If you wanted someone like a Haaland from Man City, they'll say 200, 300 million for him. So it's not easy to get strikers these days. Even the younger ones, they are very expensive, because even for Sesko himself, 55 million release clause, that's high. But they do actually think he's better than that 55 million figure. So if it gets past June, they will up that. You'll have to buy him for like 80 million. So I don't think Arsenal would want to do that. If they are serious about getting the player, they have to do it this week. Now, we've heard that Arteta really likes Sesko. We've heard that Arsenal really likes Sesko. But in terms of what is going on in Arteta's mind and Edu's minds, that's very difficult to predict. We don't know if, yes, they really like Sesko, but they have someone else in the back of their head, or they really like Sesko, but all of a sudden Osimhen has become available, he's made himself available for Arsenal, and they're thinking of changing the plan. But before that, let's finish up on Sesko. So again, Euro starts next week on Friday. We have to get him this week if you're going to get that deal done, because if it gets to next week, maybe Chelsea will be more serious about him, maybe Man United will be more serious about him, and then you don't really want to get yourself into bidding wars and all that. I don't think Arsenal want to do that this time around like we did with Man City for Declan Rice. I don't think they want that right now, because usually you want to get players in before the end of June, and this time, because there's a Copa America and the Euros, this time they will be, you know, still doing deals in July, and they don't really want to get into bidding wars, and then that pushes all the way to the end of July, and then they haven't signed the players that they want. No, I'm pretty sure. I'm expecting at least 4 players this transfer window. I'd say 3 of them come in before the end of July, and then maybe 1 comes in August. So this month, I'm expecting at least 1 signing. So will that name be Benjamin Sesko? Do you want that name to be Benjamin Sesko, or do you want that name to be the other guy that you're linked to, and that is Victor Osimhen? Now, the other thing that can make them change their mind, I don't know if it's a good thing to change their mind, but I'm assuming, I don't think many of us expected Arsenal to be linked to Victor Osimhen this transfer window. For me, I thought it was going to be Isaac. I thought it was going to to be Gyökeres. We started hearing stuff about Sesko at the end of the season, and then I was thinking, listen, maybe we have one or two more, because we had about Broby from Ajax, and maybe Tony would come back to the list. But for Osimhen, I didn't expect us to be in for him, because it was looking like Chelsea was going to be the destination for him. I already knew like 100 million plus 130 million euros. I already knew like we're not going to go for him. But since the Chelsea deal has failed and he still wants to join the Premier League, and looking at all the other teams, I can't see him fitting at Man City in terms of they already have Haaland. Man United already spent money on Højlund. Liverpool, the new coach might want to use Nunes more as a centre forward. You never know. Does he fit into the Arsenal system? We also have to talk about that. So as we've said the last couple of days, if you want to get Osimhen, you're going to sacrifice two things. You're going to have to sacrifice two things. You can't just say, yeah, let's get Osimhen. Let's pay the 130 million and then only one signing for next season and that's it. No, you have to plan for the team. You can't just use all your money for one player. You have to plan for the rest of the team, unless they have enough budget, which you also don't know how much exactly they have. Now, if you sign Victor Osimhen, if the plan was 150 million, you're going to buy 5 players, you're going to buy a winger, you're going to buy a striker, you're going to buy a midfielder, you're going to buy a goalkeeper and a defender with 150 million, that is fine. But the moment you buy Osimhen for 130 million euros, you probably have like 30 million remaining. And on top of that, remember wages, I'm sure you'll ask for a lot of wages. So there's a lot of planning that has to go into that. Yes, a player like this does not become available always. So you might have to take the opportunity when it comes, but you have to do some planning. So that's the other thing. This is a big decision week for Arteta and Edu. Do they change their mind on Sesko? Have they already changed their mind and you don't know about it, and they're trying to get the Osimhen deal done instead? But if you get the Osimhen deal done, then it becomes pretty much impossible to get a backup for Saka. It becomes maybe impossible to get another midfield, and then maybe they'll just go for a defender or just a goalkeeper. So you'll have to sacrifice a couple of positions. I want Jesus to stay personally. I have no problem with him being used on the wing, but I don't think we can depend on that the whole season and say, okay, Jesus is going to be Saka's backup, because Jesus can get injured for 2 months. He always gets injured every 2 months. So what is if he's out for 2 months and Saka's completely tired, then what do you do after that? Because you might say Nelson is there, but we're expecting Nelson to leave the club as well. So you don't really have too many options. So you have to do a lot of very good planning. And next season, I'm hoping that we don't get eliminated in the Carabao Cup and FA Cup early. I want us to go deep into those competitions. So you need a proper squad. So it's about either getting Osimhen and one more signing, or balancing your team and getting 4 or 5 signings. Now, maybe Arteta did not know like this signing would become available, and now that it has become available, maybe they'll decide to change their plans and just to fit him into the team. Just to fit him into the team, system. I personally don't think Osimhen fits into the Arsenal system. I'm sure most of you would agree the way we play. They want a striker to come into midfield, the left winger to move to the right wing, Ben White to overlap, sometimes get into midfield, Zinchenko to get into midfield, Timber to get into midfield. Sometimes Odegaard pushes to the right side. Like there's a lot of rotation. Will a player like Osimhen want to do that? Will he want to come back and defend like Jesus would or stuff like that? Would he want to just stay in the box and wait to score for goals? I need a player like that. I need a player who just wants to score goals, just wants to score 8 games in a row. I want a player like that. But in terms of him fitting into the Arsenal system, I'm not quite sure he'd want to fit into the Arsenal system. And if Arteta changes his plan and says, I'm going to get Osimhen and change the plan of the team, I would be very surprised. I would be very, very surprised, because all of that you've spoken about. And then on top of that, that means Havertz gets dropped from the team. And I don't think Havertz is not going to start the games next season unless he pushes him back to midfield and then has Havertz and Odegaard, which we don't really want. Havertz, we want him as a forward player. Then all of a sudden things change again. So you'd have to change your system, you'd have to change your plans, you'd have to change your budget. So in and off the pitch, you have to change it in terms of getting Osimhen, because you'll have to pay money. But Osimhen himself wants to join Arsenal, and Osimhen is interested in move to Arsenal, as Di Marzio said. And this one as well from Gazzetta. Victor Osimhen is expecting an offer from Arsenal in Saudi. Osimhen dreams of playing in the Premier League with a move to Saudi Arabia more a temptation for Napoli than the player. Napoli are insistent on 130 million euros. Now, again, he's got a lot of goals. I think he's got 17 last season, 20 plus in the title winning season for them. But that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Like, you have to hit the ground running. That's a lot of pressure, because we are going into next season hoping for at least 2 trophies. The pressure will be on him. We'll be banking on him to stay fit. We'll be banking on him to put score the chances that we get, because we've been missing a few big ones. So you'll be hoping that he scores the chances and we'll have to change the team. I'm sure players like Odegaard would be very happy to see Osimhen coming in. Those passes and those chances created, he'd be very happy to get him into the team. But we have to make the decision this week. So the decision in terms of, are we going to get Sesko and forget about Osimhen, get Sesko, because you can't get him really after the Euros. The release clause will be expired and you'll have to pay like 80 or 85 million for him at that point. Or are we going to forget about Sesko last minute and decide to go all in for Osimhen, use that money on him, or get both of them, which is not possible. I don't think it's possible to get both of them. That's too much money. That will be like 190 million and you haven't sorted out the other positions, because we still are not sure about players like Partey, Zinchenko, Jesus, Kivio. They're all being linked with moves away. We don't know what is going to happen. On top of that, the backup players like Nketiah and Nelson and all of those players. You don't want to have a squad where you have two incredible strikers. You'll score goals, but all of a sudden, if one of your defenders gets injured, you don't have anyone else to play there. So that could be trouble. But let's see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting week to see what do decide. Are they going to go for the push all through for Osimhen, or they're going to finalize the deal on Sesko this week? Or are they going to change their mind to a third striker that we don't know about? We don't know. Another big decision to be made is on Emil Smith-Rowe. Should we keep him? Should he leave? Should he be loaned out? And the player himself, because the player himself loves Arsenal and he wants to stay at Arsenal, but he has a big choice this week. Does he want to stay at Arsenal and be a rotation player, or does he want to go and test himself out at a team like Fulham? So in terms of Smith-Rowe and the other news, from the Standard, Arsenal will listen to offers for Emil Smith-Rowe this summer after falling out of favour under Mikel Arteta. Arsenal will also consider offers for other fringe players like Eddie Nketiah, Aaron Ramsdale and Kieran. Now the last three we know about. Tierney, but I don't expect him to be an Arsenal player next season. Ramsdale, I'm not 100% sure. It depends I think it kind of depends on the player. If the player wants to stay, I think Arteta would be like, okay, fine, we can keep you, but on the bench as a rotation option. Because the moment Ramsdale leaves, all of a sudden you have to get another goalkeeper. For Nketiah as well, we have to wait and see. We'll talk about Nketiah in the next video. So Emil Smith-Rowe, big week for him. Does he want to move on? He's been linked to Fulham. He's been linked to Aston Villa. Fulham, I'm hearing Arsenal want around, is it 30 million? I think that's the kind of money that you want for Emil Smith-Rowe. Will we get that kind of money? That is something, again, that we have to hope that we do if we actually end up selling him, because it's not going to be an easy deal to do. I'm sure a team like Fulham will come in with 20 million, Aston Villa will come in with 18 million, and Arsenal will be like, no, that's too little. You're not going to take that offer. And then it could drag on. But it's a big week for him to make a decision, because I still think Smith-Rowe is a very good player. I'd love to keep him at Arsenal for next season and see how it goes. If he stays, probably next season is the last chance. If it doesn't work out for him and then he gets injured a couple of times again and then he's on the bench, really doesn't trust him, then after that you really have to move him on. But some of you already said it's time to move him on anyway, time for him to leave and all that. So it's going to be another interesting one, man, because again, yesterday we had that Fabio Vieira is going to stay. Arteta wants Fabio Vieira to stay. So which position is left for Smith-Rowe? You'd ideally argue that Smith-Rowe as a number 10 backup for Odegaard, but if Vieira stays, he probably plays there. So Smith-Rowe, where does he play? Unless he perfects that number 8 role and comes in for Rice sometimes, or when Rice plays as a number 6, Smith-Rowe plays as a second number 10 next to Odegaard, because the left side, especially if we sign Sesko, we'll have Martinelli, we'll have Trossard, we'll have Sesko. There's no place for Smith-Rowe to play. So again, out of those 4 players that have been mentioned on that list, these 3, Smith-Rowe, Ramsdale, Tierney, and also Nketiah, I would expect at least 3 of them to leave. I'm expecting at least 3 of them to leave. I'd say maybe one of them ends up staying, but the one to stay I don't think is going to be Tierney. The other 3 have a slim chance. But again, we'll talk about Nketiah in the next video, especially if we sign a striker. I don't see the need of him staying. Like, he'll be wasting his time here because he won't get any game time at all. Last season, we only had Havertz playing in the last couple of months and Nketiah did not even come on. So imagine now if you have another striker on top of that, you're definitely not going to get another chance. So big decision week in terms of Sesko and Osimhen. A big decision to be made by Smith-Rowe again this month as well. Are we going to sell him? Are we going to keep him? Should we loan him? Should he stay and go through pre-season, because you can also stay and see how pre-season goes and then maybe leave on deadline day. That can also happen. But let me know what you guys make of that. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch up with you on the next one.